Johnny, here we are again then. And I was just thinking about the sort of like the calendar of an entertainer, particularly when you were getting into the business. And it was quite a set sort of pattern over a year, wasn't it?
Well, normally you did a pantomime if you were lucky enough to get a panto, and that would start Christmas and run right through till March. They were long ones in those days. And then in between, then you do have the nightclub circuit. So it was good. Every town had a nightclub or more than one nightclub. Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, Cardiff, they all had nightclubs. So you could do it all 3 or 4 months doing those. And then after that, perhaps you'd get a spring season somewhere, like about 2 or 3 weeks. And then the summer season started around about May or June. And that would go right through to the end of September. So that was your year, really. And then you'd start again on the next pantomime run.
All right, well, maybe we should do it. Let's do this as a summer season special. What did you go on summer season with your parents? Was that the sort of thing you had to go along with and be a part of the show?
Well, I wasn't part of the show as I was too young, but I used to be with my parents. Like, I remember learning to swim in Weymouth because my old man was doing the summer season in Weymouth. So I had the whole season there. I had to go to school, of course, in Weymouth before they broke up. So if I was in Weymouth for summer season, I'd be in school. If we went to Manchester for Panto, I'd be in school in Manchester. But the summer season, my first one I ever did on my own, I auditioned for Richard Stone, who's a big agent, and he used to put all the shows in the Butlins camps.
Butlins, Butlins, Butlins by the sea. There's a holiday that's full of fun for Mum and Dad and everyone at Butlins by the sea. Take it slow if you want to, see a show if you want to.
And they used to have what they called the resident review. See? So you'd have a show with like a comedian, a speciality act, singers, dancers, and then an orchestra. In those days, it was 10, 15 piece in the pit. It was fantastic, really. Wow. So I got the first one in 1960s. What year was it? 63 in Skegness, Butlins. And it's the first time I'd been away from home, really, any length of time. And I turn up in Skegness, and I get out to the train. I didn't have a car. And there was a sign that said, "Welcome to Skegness. It's so bracing." Bracing, it was bloody freezing. I was looking at the waves lapping over what masqueraded as a beach. It was like mud flats, Anyway, but having said that, the season was great because there was a lovely theatre there. They bought this theatre apparently at the end of the Edinburgh Festival, and they transported it brick by brick and built it here. And it was a beautiful theatre. It had 2 huge, like, alabaster horses, one either side of the stage. There was a pit with about 10, 15-piece orchestra in it. We had 12 girl dancers. The comedian was an old comic called Reg Dixon, and he was big star in the 50s and 40s. In fact, he told me he took over from George Formby in Zip Goes a Million in the West End in 1948 and got £1,000 a week. Can you imagine that money now?
Goodness me.
Anyway, there was Reg, and there was a group called the Three Squires. They were like a singing harmony group, like the Bachelors. And then you had, let me see what else was. Oh, the Del and Dorian. They were a double act that played vibraphones and guitars. They were like the speciality act. And there was me singing and dancing. That was the show. So that started in May and finished at the end of September.
Wow. And did you do something different every night? Did you have to have like 7 different, yourself have 7 different performances to put into the show?
No, we had 4. We did 4 programs, as they called it, so the people who were there for a week or 2 weeks could see 4 different shows. And then, of course, you had the Sunday nights. You would get the stars coming in to do the Sunday concerts. And you get big names coming in, of the day, coming in, and they do the Sunday concert. So I used to go and watch those. I was off that day. So I used to watch. In fact, that's when I first saw Stan Stennett do his full show, because he used to fly in his aeroplane.
We're looking for fish out of water. So let's set off with that comic Stan Stennett in his private aeroplane. Fish out of water? That poor fish has locked himself out. Go on, Rosemary Squires, let him in. He's trying to fly you to a recording session in town. That's a bit over the top, that comedy line, but we're not here to see how big personalities get from the seaside shows they're doing, like this one at Great Yarmouth. We've got other fish to fry.
Because every Butlins camp had a strip. They used to take people up for joyrides. So Stan would fly to these places. He said it was cheaper than going by car. He'd come into Skegness, do his gig, and fly back home to Cardiff.
Wow. Because we think of Stan now in many different guises, but I suppose Panto is the thing that comes first to mind. But he's a great guitar player. I remember playing He had his lovely Gibson guitar. That was a great treat to do a radio program with him.
Yeah,
well, what would his act be? That specialty act on a Sunday night?
Well, he was just a comedian, and he had his guitar. I can remember some of his gags, actually. It was funny. He had this whole line about his mother-in-law. They used to do that in those days, didn't they?
Mother-in-law jokes.
Yeah, and wife jokes. And he said, my wife, he said, she was wearing one of these schnoods, looks like a hairnet, From the back, it looked like she was trawling for mackerel. He said, from the front, looked like she caught one. And then he said, then he'd have his guitar and he'd go pling. He'd punctuate it with a guitar chord, see. And then he'd say, she went and had a facelift the other day. She doesn't look like a little old woman anymore. Looks like a little old man. And that was the guy. But he was a funny man. He had funny. He'd do a good like 40, 50 minutes. And he'd sing and he'd play his guitar. He had a good act, Stan. Very good act. Yeah.
All right. For you, were you a red coat in that thing? Or was that different to being the entertainer?
Yeah, the red coats, they used to do their own show, the Red Coat Show. We were the professionals. So we thought we were cut above the Red Coat Show. Having said that, most of the big stars started as red coats. I mean, Ted Rogers was a red coat. Des O'Connor was a red coat. They were all red coat. But no, I was just in the resident review. And I had these digs in town, right? And opposite these digs, there was another theatre, the Arcadia Theatre, where Dickie Valentine was doing the show there. And there was I forget who else was in the show. And it was an ice show. He was doing his act, but it was like Dickie Valentine on ice. And some of the ice skaters were staying in my digs.
Nice.
So it was when I had my first romantic appointment, if you like. I'd never been away from home before. I was green as grass. So this one guy, I'm sharing a room now in these digs with a guy, Eddie, I think his name was. He was an ice skater. He said, hey, John, he said, he got me a bit drunk one night. He said, John, he said, I fancy that girl up there. He said, I think her name's Christine. He said, and she's sharing with another girl called Julie. I think Julie fancies you. You go up there and she can come down here. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I don't even know the woman. I said, anyway, she's older than me. Terribly naive, So eventually I succumbed to this. Up I go now. And I don't know what the hell I'm doing. There's this woman who's looking at me like, what's this kid, Anyway, she taught me a few strokes, which I'm very pleased I've used to this day. But the funny part is, it was up like 3 floors, I think, where she was. And these round tables I used to have, like brass top tables on like removable legs. It just used to lay on top. Yeah. Well, there was one of them in the corner by the stairs. So I'm still naive. I think I better get out of here. If the landlady finds me, she'll tell my mother. I mean, that's what I thought. I was 20. Tell my mother, So anyway, I got my clothes in my hand and I'm tiptoeing now down these stairs and I hit this table. And it bounded down the doing, doing, doing. I thought, oh my God, it's going to be like one of those farces where all the lights go on, and I'm caught with my trousers off. Anyway, I stood there motionless. Nothing happened. So I thought, oh, I got away with this. So I tiptoed right down the bottom and I was on the ground floor. So I opened the door of my room and he's locked it, see? Eddie, the other guy, he's locked the door because he's got the girl in there. So I go out the back door now. By this time, the light's coming up. It's about 5:30 in the morning. So I'm stood on the windowsill, knocking on the window. He's in the bed with this girl, his arm around her. And he wakes up and he goes, what the hell are you doing there? He breaks out laughing, screaming his head. I was saying, let me in, let me in. So that was my first romantic appointment. A rude awakening, I might tell you. Yeah.
Oh, you'll never forget that. Well, neither will we. So, right. So, summer season, first one then, going up the bill. How do you work your way up the bill? And are you, as you're watching these acts every night, are you nicking bits here and there? Is that how you're learning your craft, you're learning your trade?
Well, you learn by watching them, really. I suppose you're watching somebody doing their bit. You can see how they hold the audience, and how they take their curtain calls. I mean, things like that. I mean, you just learn by watching them, really. You try not to pinch this stuff. I mean, you always pinch a gag here or there. I mean, I remember the famous Ted Ray saying once, I walked 100 miles to pinch a joke. And when I got there, I got my old one back. Because there's only so many jokes going around, you see. It's the way you put them over, I suppose. But yeah, Reg, he was great. He said to me, John, he said, I predict a good future, he said, but don't go doing blue material, he said. Because once you're effing and blinding, you got nothing to follow it with. And he was right.
Yeah, absolutely.
because they were funny men without swearing, you know.
Yeah.
They were just funny men.
Oh, then learning your craft, what sort of things did you see from the wings that you took with you and thought, right, I need to do that? You know, because, I've seen a lot of people and you think, wow, if I could only be as good as them. And you see, like not moving, sometimes not moving, you know.
Well, that's it. You see, my father used to tell me the hardest thing to do on a stage is not to move about, just stand still and try and... I remember Dorothy Squire, she told me a great thing. She said, when I did a Gibraltar Festival, I think I've spoken to you about before, she said, stand by the mic. Do not hold it in your hand and run about the stage like you're doing 25 miles, because when you're over that side, the people over there can't see you. Stand in the middle and command them. And she was dead right, because I did it and I won the contest. But yeah, you learn from the pros. You know, you can learn from a bad pro doing something wrong. Do you know what I mean? But the next season I did, what did I do after that? That was 63. I don't think I did one the following year. Oh, I think the next one was with Lonnie Donegan up in Rill. Oh, he was a massive star, Lonnie. And anyway, there was Lonnie Donegan. There was Hilda Baker. Remember, She Knows You Know. And there was a girl called Kim Cordell. She was on a series called Stars and Garters, which was quite big. There was Vince Hill started on it. Kathy Kirby started on it. And it was done a bit like a pub, you know, and they were singing the pub. Anyway, so she was in the show. We were all in the show. And it was a little theatre in Rill. I don't know if you've ever been. It was called the Gaiety. It was only small. And it had a semicircular stage, but it only had 3 dressing rooms. So there was Lonnie Donegan and his band in the main dressing room. There was Hilda Baker sharing with Kim Cordell in the other one. And there was the Ballet Montparnasse, the 6 girl dancers in the other one. And I'm in a caravan outside because I'm like I'm the small boy on the bit, see. But anyway, I'm comparing as well as doing my act. So I said, I can't hear the cues out there. There's no tannoy system in the caravan. I'm not going to walk about the corridor all night. So the girl said, well, when you come in with us. So I said, aye, all right. So I go in there with the 6 dancers. Now, you know what girl dancers are like. Yeah. They don't care if they're walking about semi-naked because that's what they do. They don't care. And so I just had to get used to it. The girls are there with half their clothes on. And I can't say I didn't enjoy myself. Anyway. So that was that for a while. And then Kim Cordell had a row with Hilda Baker because she was easy to have a row with Hilda because she wasn't the easiest.
Right. So
she ended up with us as well. So there's Kim Cordell, me, and 6 girl dancers in the same room. Then I had a row with Kim Cordell. I don't know what it was about even though it's so long ago. And it's a big screaming match going on. She's going to hit me and all that. And she was a big girl. She could hit me all right. Lonnie comes racing up the corridor. Lonnie was 5'7", wringing wet. And he stood between the two of us, keeping us apart. He said, you're going to have to come in my room, he said. I said, oh, all right then. So I ended up in Lonnie's room then. But the upside of that is it was the 1966 World Cup, and I saw the World Cup on his television.
Wow. You say about dancers and performers, because you're always in a state of dress or undress, aren't you? It's because you're rushing to the next part of the gig, and you do get quite immune to it. Because I remember doing this thing called Cappuccino Girls. Used to do it in a venue on Swansea High Street called The Heist, and there was a lot of glass windows around. And of course, we would put up the partitions, these like the drapes and everything, between us and the audience. But sometimes you'd forget that there were these big windows behind you. There you'd be taking everything off, and people, there'd be bras and pants and underwear and all that. And then sometimes you turn around, there'd be like half a dozen people.
Having a good look. I'll never forget, in the 60s and 70s, there were lots of strip shows going about. And they'd always have the likes of me as like the acts with them, but the strippers were the top of the bill. And I mean, you'd be in the dressing room with them, they'd go on fully clothed, come off stark naked, and they'd be stood there talking to you about something mundane, like, what time are you going home tonight, John? And they're stark naked. I'll never forget this comic, a bloke called Ray Fell. Do you remember Ray Fell?
And in Bournemouth and around there, I was looking for digs, and I knocked on this door, and a woman opened the door. It was pouring with rain. I said, I'd like to stay here for 8 weeks. She said, all right, stay there, and slammed the door in my face. So I was fed up. I knocked again, and this time she opened the door in a nightie. I thought, what a funny place for a door. So,
And this girl comes up, I'll never forget. Her name was Patty Powell. And she was this big, statuesque girl, and she was stood there, stark naked, and she had plaster on her foot where she'd cut it. He said, you didn't go on the stage without plaster on your foot, did you, Patty? She said, they're not looking at my bloody feet, are they?
Yeah. So, all right, so you're going up year on year on year, and it's still going very strong summer season in the 60s.
I did another one then in Clacton upon Sea. I did 3 in Clacton, funny enough. The first one I did was like a review show. And then I went back there years later, and there was me and a comedian called Norman Collier. Do you remember Norman Collier?
Good evening, ladies and... Concert tonight. Albert, back to the room. I'll keep going. Oh, I'm having... I keep on... Why is it loose?
You do the chicken and all that. Oh, that's good. Yeah, Norman Collier, very funny man. And a lady called Audrey Jeans, who was a very good soubrette type, comedienne type, and the girls, and an orchestra. Well, they weren't an orchestra, it was a trio we had there. But it was a lovely show. It was one of those shows. It was a bit of a throwback to the old days. All the girls had the feathers and the glitzy outfits, and that was a really nice season in Clacton.
Mm. What did you do during the daytime? Apart from the dances. But
I got very friendly with some of the dancers. Yeah. No, I used to go on the beach if it was nice, because you know me, I love the sea and swimming, so I used to go down the beach. And I was lucky. The first time I went, I couldn't get digs. And I looked everywhere. The place was packed. I thought, in the end, I got this chalet in one of these holiday-like places. It's like a little shack it was. Mm-hmm. But it was a bit basic. So I bought some carpet, put some carpet down, did it up, painted it, and I had this little shack I call it the shack in the car park. But then I went to Jersey. I did a long season in Jersey. I did a couple there. Did you ever go to Jersey?
Not to perform, I remember Chris Needs would always talk about going to Jersey and be there. Yeah, they look after you, and the weather's just that much nicer, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And so I did a season at the Hawaiian, the first season I did. That was with a girl called Diane Cousins. Now, Diane, she's only just retired, I think. She used to do the ships a lot. Because I did a TV series with her called Stewart, Tudor and Cousins. It was me, Johnny Stewart, and Diane Cousins. We did it from the Double Diamond in Caerphilly. And then she rings me up. She said, John, I got this season in Jersey. Would you like to be on the bill? I said, yeah. So I had this lovely long season over there. And then after that, I did one at Caesar's Palace. They had a place called Caesar's Palace, and the Water Splash, which is another season. But I went there like in the end of April. It started 1st of May, and it was snowing when I got on the boat to come home. It used to last so long, and they were full every night. Yeah. There were 15 shows on that island. It's only 7 miles long, and they were always full. And you had some great stars over there. There was Joe Longthorne and Bryn Phillips in one show. That was the Hotel de Paris. There was us in the Hawaiian. There was Rene and Renato, Save Your Love for Me. They were at the El Rancho. There was Duncan Norvell, Touch Me, you know him, and Bobby Nutt. They were at the Mediterranean. There were so many shows. Yeah. And they were all doing great business. And we all used to meet up in the daytime and have a great laugh. There was a comedian called Pat Mooney, and he used to do a thing called Mooney's Monday. And we used to raise money for charities. We used to do this, have lunch, and then we'd all get up and do a bit. And it was a great crack, Yeah. And then if they made any money, they'd give it to the charity.
But the lovely thing is, but the people you've been in Panto with and the people you do a summer season with, some of them are massive stars, some of them aren't.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a camaraderie that people don't forget. Later on in careers, if somebody's gone on to be quite famous, they're still quite happy to, as you say, give you a call, give you a ring, give you a gig somewhere on the line.
Well, Lonnie was fantastic to me. He kind of took to me. So I think they used to think I was the kid. They put me under their wing, So I'd be with Lonnie all the time. And then when I did shows with Ted Rogers, Ted would ring me every day afterwards. And who else? There was Lonnie, Ted. Of course, I did a lot abroad as well, of course. I used to go and do Australia and South Africa and places.
So what sort of time? What sort of time of year was that? That
was usually winter. If I didn't have a pantomime, I'd go and do like 3 months in South Africa. But it was difficult to get your money out. So they used to say, would you like it in traveller's checks? Yeah. What you want, dollars, pounds? So they give it you all in traveller's checks. So you just come home and whack it in the bank.
Goodness me. Goodness
Yeah.
me. Obviously, all the big stars did summer season. Morecambe and Wise.
Yeah.
Do you think of Blackpool? And that was, that Golden Mile or whatever they called it. When did you start to see it start to tail off? When did it happen, do you think?
I think towards the end of the 60s, it was starting to decline because people were all going to Spain for the holidays. They could afford it now, cheap package holidays. Because in the old days, you went into a town, even if I went on holiday with my parents, you'd arrive, we'll say, in Weymouth or so. The first thing people did was book a ticket for the theatre for that night. So that was part of their holiday, see? Same as in Blackpool, Yarmouth, all these different places. But then people were going abroad, so there weren't so many people in these places, And I think there's only one going now, and it's in Cromer Pier. And it's called The Last Variety Show, I think. And it goes on at Cromer Pier every summer. And it does great business because it's like a novelty, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I think if somebody put on a really good summer show now, it might do well. I mean, Stan, for instance, when I did Panto with Stan Stennett in Swansea Grand, that was 1969. He said to me, he said, where can we do a summer season, John? He said, I want to put a season on. So I said, what about Porthcawl? There's the pavilion there, and it's always closed. Nothing goes on. So Stan took it on. And he put up a wonderful show on. It was him. There was another comedian, like the second comedian. There was a magician, a woman comedian. There was a double knockabout comedy act. There was the dancing waters where they had all these wonderful fountains. There was 6 girl dancers. There was me. There was another girl called Leslie King. It was a really big summer show. He sold out for the season. He made a blinking fortune. So much so, he took everybody at the end of the season to Spain for holiday and paid for everybody.
Goodness me, he didn't fly you, did he?
No, he didn't fly us. But the thing is, I couldn't go. I was the only one who couldn't go. I was lucky enough, or unlucky, if you like. I got a series to do on HTV. It was called Rhybydd o Fyd. It was a Welsh magazine program, and I got booked to do like 12 of these. So I thought, well, I can't, not do it. So I did, see. Yeah. But some of the stories, we had this drummer. He was a character, Ronnie, the drummer. I don't think he'd been many places. He's in the airplane apparently. He said, God, look down there. He said, they look like ants down there. So one of the wags said, they are ants. We haven't taken off yet. No, it was a great season, that. I really enjoyed. I did a couple with Stan, summer seasons. And more pantomimes I can care to remember.
Yeah. It's funny when you're in a company, if the company's a good company, like when you go on a great tour with a band, those friendships do last. You don't want it to end. You want to go on holiday together afterwards, don't you?
It's like a family, isn't it? Mm. At the end of the season, all the girls are crying. We'd all everybody used to give everybody a little present at the end, and all the girls on the stage go, "Oh, it's the end of the season," because it's been like a family for 3 months. Yeah. You're thrown together. This is where you get all these romantic appointments because you're so close with people. You're bound to get close to them, aren't you? Yeah. It's like come dancing. Somebody's dancing with a girl, legs all the way to the airport. And for 3 months, how long are they rehearsing? Every day, 8 hours a day. I mean, they got to have strong wills, I think.
Or good lawyers.
Good lawyers. That's right.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's the summer season. We should do a pantomime special, shouldn't we?
Oh, let's do a panto one, yeah.
Who would be the best person to maybe start us on panto, do you think? Who's the most, most experienced panto person we could go for?
Well, there's a few. I mean, the oldest one, he's still alive, is our dear old Wyn Calvin. He's been in panto for like 50 years. In fact, he did his very first with my parents back in Swansea Grand in 1952, I think he said it was.
Wow. Should we try and get hold of Wyn then?
Well, let's get hold of Wyn. And then, of course, who else? Our friend Mike, he's been in loads of pantos. Mike Doyle. And then you got Kerry Dupre, who's a dame. Do you know Kerry?
Yes. And his sister Ria. Yeah.
Sister. We should get those two on, shouldn't we? That'd be a good one, wouldn't it?
The Jones Girls.
Because they're not working at the moment.
Oh, plenty of people to go then. We're not going to run out of material soon. And just one question before we go now. This is interesting, Johnny, because we were watching last week's Mal&Johnny show. Well, I forced my kids to watch it. And around the table, my daughter has been home since last June living with me because, lockdown. So she's been working in the attic and sometimes I let her out. She said to me, Dad, have you ever met Johnny Tudor? And I went, yeah. And I went, well, I must have. It's like he's become my best friend over the last year, and I can't, in all honesty,
remember meeting you in person.
I don't think so.
I may have bumped into you in the BBC or something, but I don't remember actually being in your company for any length of time. I know you now better than I know my wife.
Well, I tell you what, because we shared some stories, Johnny. It was just bizarre, though. My initial reaction was, of course, yes, of course. Oh, no, I don't. I can't. Well, no. There you go.
Right.
There you go.
We're Butlins forever now, I think. That's it.
It's goodbye from me. Oh, no, it's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from you. Ta-da, mate. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Ta-da.